Let's talk about one of Harley-Davidson's most iconic engines, and that is the Shovelhead. Built as a successor to the previous Panhead engine, the engine was first produced with a shallower combustion chamber, larger valve drop for both intake and exhaust, better porting, and stronger valve and pistons. That gave the new engine an extra 10 horsepower along with a few different appearances. The engine gained the nickname Shovelhead because of the rocker covers that looked a little bit like an upside down coal shovel. While the engine did have problems, it gave Harley-Davidson a 26% sales increase during the early part of the timeline. Now with the Shovelhead's run, the engine had many different changes to improve power, cooling, and oil consumption. The engine only had 10 fins for cooling, which caused them to run hot. Another problem was that the oil would pool in the cylinder heads, causing it to leak into the valves and burn oil. And another problem was the oil would actually pool in the crankcases rather than being pumped, causing the engine to overheat and cause serious harm. Oil leakage and consumption became a problem with the bikes. Many owners reported losing as much as a quart every 500 miles. In fact, Harley-Davidson owner manuals and shop manuals of the day specified that oil consumption varied from 250 to 500 miles per quart. Now, a lot of this was due to the 1940s technology, where the old stock Bonolite pistons were fitted with single-piece oil scraper rings. Excessive heat in some motors also caused serious problems. With the adoption of unleaded fuels in the American market, the non-hardened valve seats of the vintage Shovelhead could wear excessively and require service. Some of the detractors of the Shovelhead would say things like the motor would often last only between 500 to 5,000 miles. On the other hand, simply replacing the one-piece oil scraper rings with slightly later three-piece versions and changing out the valve seats with hardened seats would result in oil consumption and head longevity on par with succeeding Evolution engines. With Harley-Davidson trying to fix the engine rather than research and develop, they fell behind the competition of the cheaper, more reliable Japanese bikes taking the control over the market. As a way to combat their financial struggles, the motor company actually emerged with American Machine and Foundry, known as AMF, hoping to gain their struggles. After AMF took control, the merged company started to make attempts to improving the engine with their own funds. In 1970, the alternator was redesigned for less strain, hidden behind a new and redesigned side case. The carburetors changed to the Zenith Bendix, improving flow and power that started to gain a better image for the engine. However, in 1974, the engine started to show more problems. With the United States evolving into the '73 oil crisis, gasoline had as much lower octane and consistency that severely hurt the engine's performance. Engine knock became a large problem, causing overheating that led to blown gaskets and damaged head bolts. AMF tried to combat this with producing more units in 1976 despite the engine's problems, which ended up leading to a damaged employee reputation along with the seriously declined quality in 1978. Another problem that arose in 1979 was the motors were fitted with electronic ignition units, which were prone to fail. Many owners would swap out the units for older point ignition style systems for reliability. The larger compression ratio on the newer engines was still a serious problem due to the low fuel quality and octane. With many Shovelhead owners having to turn towards aftermarket parts to keep their bikes running properly, Harley-Davidson realized that they would have to start redeveloping a new engine. Towards the end of the Shovelhead's production, Harley-Davidson made numerous modifications in an attempt to keep the engine usable for production. Belt drive was added to the motorcycles in 1980 to prevent oil leakage from the enclosed chain, along with a 5-speed transmission and rubber-mounted mounts to help reduce vibration. In 1981, Harley-Davidson purchased AMF's share of the company back, adding a new oil pump, improving the valve guides, and lowering compression to help the engines run on lower quality gasoline in the United States. The engine was produced until 1984, where the Evolution engine, which had aluminum heads and barrels, began to take over the new models. The engine could still be found in certain models such as the FLH in 1985, but was shortly replaced by the succeeding Evolution engine. Hit that follow button to learn a little bit more about Harley-Davidson history.